Hi, I'm Sarah Gutterman, CEO of Green Builder Media. Today, we are diving into one of the most exciting and fastest evolving areas in high performance building, HVAC innovation. Over the past few years, we have seen massive transformation across the housing sector, driven by electrification, digitization, and an entirely new approach to comfort and energy efficiency. HVAC systems aren't just about heating and cooling anymore. They're becoming intelligent, grid aware, and central to the decarbonization of our homes. So, to unpack where the industry is headed, I am joined by someone who lives and breathes building performance, Matt Reisinger, builder, educator, and host of the Build Show Network. Matt's been on the front lines of innovation for decades, helping builders understand what works, what doesn't, and what's next. How do you see the balance between design, performance, and comfort evolving in residential HVAC?
Design is a big deal. When I started in the industry 30 years ago, there was very, very minimal design. It was how many square feet's the house. Let's divide that by some ratio of 3 or 4 or 500 square feet to the ton. And then the crew would show up with that size equipment and a bunch of boxes of flex duct and would do an install. And I hate to say it, but that's still happening to a large degree in the overall industry. But when you think about your audience, people that are reading green building, media, I think we've really moved into a new era and a better era of thinking about and designing systems for the house and spending many hours before we show up to really think about, hey, what's the right system for this house? Let's really do more than just have my manufacturer at the supply house do a manual J in 10 minutes. I'm actually seeing my colleagues being willing to spend the money on HVAC design. I think we're going to see more and more of that over time, but that gets me really excited that people are seeing the value in that. It also, frankly, means that a lot of builders, including me, have seen failures by not doing it the right way. And we've had, to your next point, we've had comfort complaints with houses. And I think the more high performance the home you build, the more you need to frankly think about your HVAC system. And that's a good thing. I mean, that means that we're going to have smaller systems. We're going to have well-designed systems. I think also, though, that our clients have bigger comfort demands than they did even a couple years ago. So it's an interesting and kind of fun new era, because not only are we seeing builders do it, we're seeing clients that are willing to pay for it and saying, you know what, I do want this in my house. I want dehumidification. I want fresh air. I want a design system. I want to be able to control my bedroom separately from my living room. And so we're seeing, a proliferation of ductless systems or low static pressure ducted as well being used. Like a house I just completed recently, Sarah, that had a full carrier system in it. We utilized several different types from what would traditionally be called a mini split to that same technology, but put in a different form factor that goes away in the ceiling, like a one-way cassette, to high static pressure systems that are using the same variable refrigerant flow technology back at the compressor outside.
Smart controls, diagnostics, and connectivity are really becoming the norm with a lot of these advanced technologies and enabling systems. And we're seeing everything from demand-side energy management systems to whole home IAQ systems proliferated. So talk about what you're seeing in terms of those advances with respect to HVAC systems, and maybe give us some examples of these whole home systems that you are installing. And then, if you can kind of pontificate on the benefits for both builders and homeowners, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a bigger question. Let me start by saying that there is no one perfect product. These are systems. I have, in this house that I built recently, a carrier HVAC system where we use multiple different HVAC components to make a really high performance HVAC. But the V part of the HVAC, ventilation, was from a whole nother company, from Life Breath. And then I also am a big fan of adding the word D, of the letter D in there, HVAC plus D, In the South, I'm a big believer that every home needs a standalone dehumidifier. So we've got a Santa Fe dehumidifier in that house, all underneath the Reisinger Build logo that my customer sees, right, as the manufacturer or the maker of the house. But it's a lot of different parts and components. And then when it comes to controls, I'm really excited to see that a lot of manufacturers have given really good controls and are talking a lot about it more these days, which is kind of fun.
Now, we have a lot more choices now with respect to ductless and flexible HVAC systems than we've
Yeah.
ever had before. And those are particularly important for retrofit projects or projects where space, architecture, or perhaps preservation rules limit the ability to design in traditional ductwork.
Yep.
So, talk a little bit more about some of the innovations that you're seeing along those lines that are streamlining HVAC design and installation.
Ductless is really a fascinating technology because there's so many forms. We've got high mount walls, we've got floor consoles, we've got ceiling cassettes, and as I mentioned, we can do ducted units as well out of what we traditionally call a mini split. So in my personal house, I have a ducted mini split that just controls my master bedroom. So I've got just this one little section. So now if I want to sleep at 67, but have the rest of my house at 72, I'm good to go. The other benefit of all these different types of things like one-way cassettes like I've got in my kitchen is it can be very seamless. I'm shocked by how many people come over to my house for a party and they have no idea that that small rectangular grill on the ceiling is actually a one-way cassette. Um, Carrier makes these. A lot of other manufacturers make these too. They're in lots of different formats and functions. They can fit between standard and I-joists. So they're really nice and tight or in unconventional spaces. In my case, I didn't have the room for ductwork in there. And my HVAC designer, which was Positive Energy here in Austin that I use, was like, hey, what about a one-way cassette right here? This is the perfect choice. This will cool this whole area or heat this whole area. And it's extremely unobtrusive. The other thing is they're really well, especially ductless, is really well suited for historic homes and preservation projects where adding ductwork might compromise the architectural integrity or possibly violate restoration guidelines for a project. So having options on ductless is a really big deal. The one thing you do want to remember though on ductless that I always caution people is remember you don't get as good a filtration on a ductless system. So you need to think about that. Am I going to have another section of the house that's going to be a medium or a high static pressure that I can use a standard filter and do some good filtration? Do I want to think about some standalone filtration? And then lastly, I find this across the board in general, houses that are utilizing nothing but mini splits, they typically don't do a great job of dehumidification. So we need to think about separate dehumidification. And I do that regardless of whether the whole house is on a ductless or not, because I feel like in the South, every house really needs a separate dehumidification system.
So I have a two-part question. First, we're seeing that the shift towards all-electric homes is accelerating. So how do you see advanced HVAC technologies, particularly heat pumps and ductless systems, helping builders deliver both performance and sustainability? And then the second part of that question is, how can builders use advanced HVAC systems and other enabling technologies to reduce the total cost of homeownership for their clients, even beyond just energy savings?
Let me go back to one misconception I think that's still common that I keep thinking is gone, but is not. When people think heat pumps for heating, they think about cold air coming out of their registers. And in fact, I did too until 15 or 20 years ago when I started using heat pumps for heating and realized the new generation of heat pump technology, Carrier and other manufacturers, they deliver much, much hotter air than we had in the 80s and 90s or even 70s. So if you grew up in a cold climate and you had a heat pump, your parents put one in, a lot of times they were underneath body temperature. They were blown out air that was, let's say, 85 degrees, which felt cold to your hand as you put your hand up by the register because your body's at 98.6, right? So 85 felt cold to you. They were raising the temperature, but it was doing it in a way that felt cold to you. Well, today they're putting out typically in the 110s, 115 degree temperatures, so they feel hot coming out of the register. So it's a whole different breed, and they're incredibly efficient. And in particular, like several manufacturers have heat pumps that give 100% heating capacity down to -5 Fahrenheit outside. So this is a whole new generation of technology that's incredibly efficient and also puts out heat as if you had a gas furnace. And then, of course, we've got a whole these days too. We've got all as we think about green. We're on Green Builder Media, right? We've got a whole nother level of Freon systems. For instance, Carrier's Puron Advance, which is R454B, has a much lower GWP than we've had in the past. You know, that's really going to reduce your environmental impact. And there's a bunch of other technology out there when it comes to heat pumps that I think people just don't realize this isn't the same stuff that we were using 20, 30 years ago.
Now, you've been at the forefront of building science for years. What advice would you give to builders who want to stay ahead on the HVAC innovation curve?
The biggest driver when it comes to innovation is making sure that you know what your clients are looking for and making sure that you can meet those needs. And as I mentioned at the kind of top of our session, clients are really interested in health, and you mentioned it too. You know, I think COVID really changed that. And people want to know what their options are out there when it comes to building a healthy home with good indoor air quality. So as builders, we need to be able to provide that. We need to say, hey, here's the system that we currently have priced in for you. But if you're interested in going a step further, you know, for instance, doing a multi-split system, you know, having this bedroom have its own thermostat with its own system, you know, we can do that for you. And let me tell you the benefits of that. And let me give you some pricing on that so we can see if that's something you're interested in. I think builders will be surprised that when they go down this nerdy pathway, people really want it. But if we don't tell them about it, they're going to move in, and 2 years later, they're going to see their friend that has that and go, why didn't you tell me that was an option? So I think that builders have this kind of built in, oh, I don't want to offer things that are going to cost more money because I'm worried that they're going to think that I'm this expensive builder, that we're going to raise the price tag too much. But in reality, when it comes to good HVAC systems, everybody wins. You know, a more expensive system means I get more profit as a builder, but it's not the main benefit for me. The main benefit is a client that gets a really comfortable house, that gets a really efficient house, and that ultimately gets a really healthy house that's going to be healthy for them for a long time to come.
Looking 5 years ahead, what excites you most about where HVAC technology and home performance in general is headed?
You know, Sarah, I think the thing that excites me the most is that more and more builders are realizing that they need to step up their game when it comes to first the envelope on the house and really building a good envelope, a tight, dry enclosure for our systems. And then next, that builders are actually designing and talking to manufacturers about more than just the old school gas forced air system that we put in for years. The amount of technology that's available to us and that's also mature and reliable is unbelievable. And, you know, I mentioned Carrier on this project, but there's a bunch of other manufacturers out there as well. So, you know, finding a good manufacturer that you can partner with, that has a good support staff, that can talk to you about the options out there and also train your HVAC techs that you're used to using. Boy, it makes a big difference long term. And I see more and more builders signing up for high performance when it comes to both the envelope and the HVAC system.